Hello and welcome to the APM podcast. My name is Professor Adam Boddison and I'm the Chief Executive of APM and your host. Today we're delighted to welcome to the podcast Steve Langbridge. Now Steve is the Director of Programmes at SEA, a company based in the southwest of England which specialises in developing and delivering defence solutions to a global customer base. Its business areas include naval, ship and fleet protection and undersea surveillance systems. Steve was appointed to his director role in July, having previously been head of the project management office. In this conversation, Steve's going to tell us what it's like to deliver projects and programs in the defence sector, including the challenges of working in such a fast evolving and complex space. So Steve, thanks very much for joining us. And to kick off, let's talk a little bit about you and your background. Can you give us a sense of your background and also your career journey to date?
Yeah, hi, Adam, and it's great to meet you and I really appreciate the opportunity to join today. So in terms of my background, I've been really fortunate to work across a number of sectors with lots of really exciting teams. But if I rewind right back to the start, I began my career as an electronic engineering apprentice. I was really fortunate to work for a company that supported my education, and I developed along that technical path all the way through to bachelor's degree level in electronics. At that point, I made a switch into management and leadership, and I completed a master's degree in engineering management alongside various other complementary leadership and project management qualifications. And I guess it's this point and that transition that coincided with my move away from hands-on engineering and into leadership positions. So professionally, over the last 20 years, I've had the privilege of leading diverse teams across Europe, delivering projects in sectors ranging from industrial power generation to aerospace to fast-moving consumer goods. And then, as you mentioned, more recently in the defence space with SEA. I've had the privilege of delivering everything from major capital investment projects in personal care manufacturing lines all the way through to the design and development of complex systems, some of which I'm sure we'll touch on today. Over the course of my career, I've held senior leadership roles across engineering, operations, and now programs. But I guess the key theme here is that the focus is always on delivery, people, and continuous improvement.
I know we always have that advice, when you write your CV and they say it's going to be on 2 pages. I'm thinking that's a heck of a CV, Steve, isn't it? I don't know how you would keep it on the 2 pages. Well, brilliant. What a fantastic background. So that's a bit about you. What about SEA? You kind of touched on it briefly. Maybe you could tell us a bit about when it was founded and the types of products you develop, who your customers are, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So SEA, or Systems Engineering and Assessment, as is otherwise known, is a UK-based defence company. We were founded in 1961 and we were acquired by the Cohort PLC, who are an independent technology group, in 2007. So our team is made up of over 400 people and we operate across the southwest of the UK with 3 sites. And we also have a wholly owned subsidiary in Canada. So as you mentioned at the start, our expertise lie in ship and fleet protection, underwater surveillance and complex systems integration. The big things for us is we design, manufacture and deliver a wide range of advanced products and capabilities, which are often modular and adaptable to meet specific customer challenges. So some of the core products, and again, I'm sure we'll touch on this later, but we deliver world-leading torpedo launcher systems, both into the UK and navies globally. We have a CrateSense towed array system, which is a flexible scalable and modular sonar system. And then most recently, we have developed a trainable countermeasure launcher called Ancilia, which is a rapid protection decoy system designed to protect naval vessels. I'll do some jargon busting on that later. All of the products that we make are designed and manufactured at our facility in North Devon. And we support customers, including the UK MOD and other navies internationally across Asia, the Indo-Pacific region, Europe, South America, and Canada. We work closely with shipyards, governments, and lots of defence partners. So we're in a really good position because we understand some of the challenges that are being faced. And we're, again, uniquely positioned that we can provide solutions that meet these challenges, both now and in the longer term. The last thing on this, as I mentioned, is that we're part of a larger group called the Cohort PLC. The benefit of this for us is that this group gives us the backing and the stability of a larger organisation while still allowing us to operate with the agility and focus of a specialised mid-tier defence business. Yeah, exciting.
It is very exciting. And Obviously the world is in a very challenging place at the moment. There's obviously conflicts going on all over the place. And I guess for businesses operating in the defence space like yours, then there's going to be huge demands, an expectation from you to kind of to meet probably what I guess is a growing order book. I also mindful that some of the projects you're working on will be quite sensitive and you may not be able to talk about them all, but are there any that you can talk about and give us some examples of maybe the kinds of projects that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of alluded to some of the exciting stuff in the last question, but if I pick up on those three in particular, so Ancilia, which is our decoy launcher, is a new flexible maritime countermeasure system. This is designed to provide rapid protection to ships from modern threats like anti-ship missiles. Before I kind of go any further on that, a countermeasure is essentially something that's designed to deceive or mislead a threat, such as an incoming missile. There are lots of different types of countermeasures, but typically they can include things like physical decoys that create a cloud that masks a target or a ship, or it can be a pyrotechnic countermeasure that fires a flare to attract heat-seeking missiles. So that's essentially what the decoy launcher does and how the countermeasures operate. So for us, Ancilia is slightly different. So older systems are typically fixed in place on a ship. So when a threat is detected, the ship would need to adjust so that it could fire the countermeasure in the appropriate position. What's really important here is that Ancilia is actually trainable by its nature. And what that means is it can rotate and be aimed, meaning the ship doesn't have to respond and move to these threats. That's really vital because the speed of missiles is significantly different now to what it was 20 years ago. So that's a vital capability. And we recently won a £135 million contract with the UK MOD to give our navies this capability to help us defend against attacks at sea. So that's kind of the first one. The second one is a product called KraitSense. And this is a flexible sonar system, which includes one of our world-leading towed array systems called KraitAway. But again, a little bit of explanation what that means. A towed array is essentially an underwater surveillance system that's made up of acoustic sensors, usually hydrophones, which are really just underwater microphones, which are towed behind a ship on a long cable. They're used to detect and track underwater objects like submarines and other things. Obviously, a key part of this, though, is to correctly identify the sounds you're picking up. What you don't want to do is miscategorize a ship with a whale or a wave or something like that. So that's kind of how a towed array works. And that's where kind of KraitSense for us comes in. It comprises of a 20 millimeter towed array, and that's quite small compared to traditional towed arrays, which are more like 90 millimeters. This smaller size naturally means it's lighter and therefore uses a lot less power than traditional arrays. And this means that it can be fitted to a wider range of vessels. Again, typically these older systems are more complex, they're very large, and they're really only suitable for specialist navies and specialist ships. Whereas again, this is more flexible, so it can be fitted on smaller ships and can even be used in an uncrewed on an uncrewed vehicle too. This flexibility also means that navies that are operating across large coastlines or island regions where threats seem to be growing at a faster rate can have this type of protection. So this is an essential key product as we move forward in the anti-submarine warfare kind of world. And again, we're much like our Ancilia product that we talked about before, really proud to be supplying KraitSense to a Southeast Asian navy, which is really helping them enhance their defense. And again, and get this cost point completely different to that heavy infrastructure. And then probably lastly, just rounding off the other products we talked about earlier, is our torpedo launcher system. So this is designed as a lightweight system that can defend against submarines and other threats. For us, our TLS, or our torpedo launcher system, is configurable. One of our configurations is a triple launcher, which means we can fire 3 torpedoes from one unit at a time. And this is quite a unique product as well because it's weapon agnostic. So navies aren't locked into one Sapphire or one round type. There are some configurations that are needed, but that's a unique thing for us, and it's relatively easy to maintain. And much like our other 2 products, we have recently secured contracts to supply this to the Royal Malaysian Navy, as well as navies in Latin America. So hopefully that gives you a good flavor of what we're working on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you for that, Steve. So it's really interesting. And I wonder if I just might ask a different question before I ask you about kind of what a typical day looks like. At the beginning, you talked about your career trajectory almost as an engineer. I know that you're now in a kind of director of programs role, so a kind of project type role. And when I listened to you talking about the various products that SEA has, I was in my mind thinking there's a kind of product management element to this. I mean, as a kind of professional, how do you kind of identify? So is it as an engineer, as a project professional, as a product development professional? Is it a bit of all of those?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. I see myself as a project professional, and I think that's really important because I think it's a skill set that provides a unique offering to the world, and sometimes you don't always really notice that. But I absolutely see myself as a project professional, and I'm fortunate that I've had some really fantastic rounding in other areas. And I find that particularly in my current role in the defence sector, my engineering background is helpful. Honestly, it gives you that broader understanding of what's actually happening on the ground, what the teams are really working on. And because I've been there a little bit myself, albeit a long time ago, you kind of see some of the challenges, but also some of the really good things they do. So again, that's really helpful. And similarly, the operational elements of my previous lives, I guess, for want of a better word, again, gives me that kind of understanding of what's happened in other parts of our business, which again are vital to the project. But no, I absolutely see myself as a project professional. But I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had.
I was hoping that's what you would say. So in terms of your role then at the moment, so you obviously got this recent promotion as director of programs. You know, there'll be people listening to this that don't have a sense of what that means in practice. You know, what is there such a thing as a typical day? You know, what is the remit of the role? Can you tell us a little bit about that, what that means?
Yeah, of course. And I guess the first thing I can say is, as you would probably imagine, and as everybody else would imagine, it's quite broad. It's quite broad in scope. And I suppose if you boil that right back, it's at its core, I'm ultimately accountable for project and program delivery and performance of both projects and programs across our business. So that means I really need to ensure that we've got the right capability in our teams, the right structure and the right culture to ensure that we can continue to deliver complex solutions with both agility, and that's a really big thing, particularly as our world is evolving, but also assurance. So those are the kind of the core bits. I mean, we talked about some of the competencies of SEA earlier, and me specifically, I lead a team structured around 8 distinct business areas, and each of these areas are responsible for delivering specialist capabilities to our various customers globally, ranging for things like the torpedo launchers that I talked about, to advanced sonar systems, to comm systems. So there's a lot in there too. And these teams are at the heart of our growth ambitions, and through the projects that they're delivering and the products they're creating, the project teams and the engineering and technical teams within them are basically delivering stuff that's reinforcing our reputation as a trusted supplier. I suppose it is difficult to really tell you what a typical day looks like, but ultimately my role really is about enabling teams to deliver high impact solutions and about clearing the path for them to be able to do what they're good at. So yeah, it's absolutely that, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit then about the kind of commercial side of things. My impression of the defence sector traditionally has been it's quite a high bar to enter. So you know, like a new company turning up, for example, that wanted to compete with you, I think would find it, or historically would have found it, quite difficult for all kinds of reasons, ranging from, you know, national security intelligence type thresholds to get through and so on, but also the kind of level of technology and innovation. You kind of need it would be quite hard as a new player coming into that. However, now with advances in tech and so on, I wonder whether that's changing, and also just how, as an organization, you just kind of keep ahead of the curve, because I guess you've also got organizations similar to yours operating in other parts of the world who are competing against you and supplying other countries and so on. So how do you stay ahead of what's going on and kind of continue to be innovative and everything else?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, the barriers to entries that were there typically are kind of subsiding a little bit now. And we talk about the evolution in the defence space. Obviously, the government is well publicised. The government are investing a lot of money in defence at the moment. And this increasing investment is absolutely driving a rapidly evolving world. So innovation is typically happening on multiple fronts. And what we're seeing is that there's a major shift towards autonomous vehicles and emerging sonar technologies. So for us, it's about making sure that we're playing in the right places and that we're using our skill sets in the right areas. So, a key area we're focused on is evolving our sonar technologies to allow for faster updates, greater interrogation of data, better fit with evolving navies and platforms, and giving that kind of improved cross-functionality between different domains, so not just necessarily always the maritime domain. Obviously, this transition to kind of unmanned vehicles and investment in ships and submarines, interoperability, or the ability to work with different systems is absolutely key. And again, that's something that's at the forefront of our mind when we develop, essentially got modern defense systems. The thing about, in terms of staying ahead of the curve, we're really proud of SEA, are all of the ways that we kind of do that. You mentioned about small businesses. We're uniquely positioned here too, in that we're still small enough that we can respond quickly to changing demands, and we can be agile and we can pivot, but we're large enough that we can scale to solutions. So the other thing that we do, and I talked about those products earlier, is we invest our own funds in product development and innovation. So we're not always waiting. We're investing ourselves in private venture work. And we determine how best to do that through a few different means. So we've got a whole host of subject matter experts and domain specialists within our business, which we're very fortunate to have. We also have, as we talked about earlier, close relationships with navies and customers around the world. And kind of the combination of these help us shape our product roadmaps to match what we see as the immediate needs today, but give us a steer on what we think the emerging needs are. So in some cases, what we need today is going to be a little bit different to what we need in 5-10 years' time. So we have to kind of predict a little bit, but we're well positioned on that. The other nice thing that we do, so in those 8 business areas that I have, one of them is a research and simulation business area. And that particular area works really closely with Defence Science and the Technology Laboratory, or DSTL, and they deliver research and studies for the UK MOD. So this collaboration is also great for us, because it doesn't just support cutting-edge exploration, but it also ensures that all of the outcomes from that are strategically aligned with what we're working on. So again, it's another extra insight that helps us stay on that front foot. So I suppose what I'm really saying is that kind of blended approach between the technical work we do with DSTL, the customer insight that we have, and some of our own kind of strategic foresight means that we can kind of stay competitive.
Yeah, that all makes good sense. I like that idea of the sweet spot, small enough to be nimble, but large enough to scale. That's really interesting. You didn't really touch on AI so much there. It's obviously impacting every business in every country. How is it affecting the sector, but specifically the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, great question, isn't it? And of course, it's really easy and really tempting to get caught up in all of the hype regarding AI. It also doesn't seem that sensible to ignore it. At SEA, what we're doing really is identifying specific areas where we can use AI in a targeted manner. So again, we've talked, a common thread through this so far has been our sonar systems, and that's where AI and machine learning can be transformational to the way that we process data and analyze data. So this is particularly crucial for navies that are starting to use uncrewed vehicles. So what we need are systems that can rapidly detect, respond, and even predict threats. And of course, all of that needs to be done with minimal human intervention. So in effect, what we're looking at is how can AI augment traditional capabilities and reduce the workload of traditional sonar operators and still enable fast data understanding and aid accurate decision making. So that's really where it's really making the biggest inroad for us at the moment in our product offering. But outside that, the use of AI is going to have an impact everywhere else, from meeting support to document production to software development. It does sort of seem inevitable that this is going to come everywhere to make everybody's lives easier and really free up time for impactful things. So so for us, there's a lot of hype, but what we're doing is making sure that we're taking a measured, innovation-driven approach to integrating AI where we think it can make a real difference.
What I hear and see out and about is the more that the defence sector kind of uses AI to keep people safe, the more that people who are out there wanting to cause threats are going to use AI to tackle that. Are we going to end up, if I kind of get my crystal ball out for a moment now, are we going to end up in a situation where, when there is conflict between countries and so on, that we're going to end up actually with just AI fighting other AI? Is that where we're headed?
Yeah, it's hard to predict, isn't it? But the thing, you're right, warfare is changing rapidly. And that's what's driving innovation and the big change in innovation. So if you think about the war in Ukraine, it's being fought in a different kind of way with drones and autonomous vehicles and AI-driven responses and threat detection. So it's not unreasonable to think that it will continue to change the way that warfare works. And that's some of the challenge that we have and other companies have, where we have to predict what we need right now and what we think we're going to need in the next couple of years. But what will warfare and what will defense look like in kind of 5 years' time? So it's difficult to answer, but you're right. It is easier to see defense particularly being more focused around technology.
Interesting times. Now, I always talk about the project profession and project management roles being kind of transferable between sectors. But equally, I also know that there are some things that are specific to particular sectors. If you're working in the legal profession, delivering projects, it's going to be different than if you're in nuclear, if you're in defence and so on. So when it comes to defence, what would you say is the things that might be unfamiliar to people who are outside of the defence sector? So what is it that your project professionals are dealing with, kind of, if you like, above and beyond the standard expectations of project professionals?
It is unique, you're right. But like all sectors, managing scope is always a challenge. I suppose the thing in defence is that scope can vary massively. So you can end up with a situation where you have really detailed requirements at a low technical level, actually. And for a different customer, you could have something that's really high level and broad. And I suppose the key for us is to interpret all of these types of things, band them in a way that aligns with our product offerings, and quite honestly, gives us a clear, manageable contracting mechanism. With that variety in scope, it's really important that we make sure that we can both get on and off contract, so that they're quite important. But beyond that, one of the more distinct challenges in the defence sector, which we kind of already touched on, is the pace of change and the rise of uncrewed and autonomous platforms. So this means that we're constantly ensuring that capabilities we're developing today will remain relevant over the life of the project or the program. So we manage this, as we said earlier, by investing in our own product development. But again, we need to make sure that those products we're developing today do have the ability to kind of pivot and diversify themselves, or the ability to spiral develop them and add future capabilities. So that's also quite important. The irony here, though, in the defence sector is that this rapid pace at the innovation stage is contrasted with the long life cycle of a project once you're on contract. It's not unusual, once you're on contract, for a project to run for 10 years or more, particularly once a capability is in service. So the changes kind of shift. So at that point, skills retention, knowledge continuity, and maintaining long-term stakeholder relationships becomes really crucial, because again, it's not just a 1 to 2 year project. And in sectors like IT, potentially projects are a lot faster in turnaround. So we need to kind of consider that. And then going back to that capability piece, over the course of that 10, 15 years, how are we going to introduce spiral development? How are we going to increase capability? Particularly when today we don't necessarily know what that's going to look like, but the physical system is there. And of course, in that same time frame, you've got things like obsolescence to manage. So again, things like processing today and the type of systems that are needed today are going to look quite different to kind of 10, 12 years' time, particularly if we talk about AI advances. So those types of things are quite different in our world. So I suppose while the core principles are generally shared across lots of sectors, defence demands a unique balance, that ability to move quickly and innovate, but also kind of plan for longevity, sustainability, and mission critical delivery. So it's a bit of an oxymoron.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so you talked about skills there. Do you, when you're recruiting for staff, do you kind of recruit if you like, pure project professionals and then give them the extra that they might need that you've just talked about? Or do you try and recruit specifically to these quite specialist kind of skills that you've talked about?
So if we focus in the project management sphere for a second, the reality is we take a blended approach to recruitment. And we're actively looking to bring in experienced senior project leaders, particularly with people that have a background in defence project delivery, because their sector knowledge and educational background mean they can hit the ground running for us. So they're incredibly valuable. But at the same time, we're firmly committed to developing talent from within. And that includes bringing in junior professionals and helping them develop through our business. Sometimes it means taking other people within other departments. So engineers are a good example, and cross-training those, particularly when an engineer demonstrates strong potential and a genuine interest in project management. But we also welcome individuals from outside our sector who've got solid project management fundamentals, but might need support to build up that industry-specific experience. So that's kind of the approach. And obviously recruitment varies for us massively depending on our site. So we've got 3 sites in the Southwest. It's obviously easier to recruit in Bristol for lots of reasons than it is in Barnstable in North Devon. Both have their other sides. So Bristol's obviously far more competitive. Typically in North Devon, if you join the company, you generally stay there because you're either living there for a work-life balance or you're moving to the area for a work-life balance that you otherwise don't have. So again, it's quite different. And in Barnstable this year, we've actually got an employee that's celebrating 50 years with the company. So those things are really, really important for us. But again, that's where working with you guys and the APM more broadly to make sure that we create structured project management pathways in our business. We align with your competency framework and we get that educational piece right. So that actually, if we aren't recruiting senior leaders that have been in our space for a long time, that we're able to support that development.
No, well, I hope he gets something, a good gift for being there for that long. That's what I would say. Yes. You talked about leadership there, so let's talk about that. You obviously are a distinguished leader yourself. You've probably worked with lots of distinguished leaders. What would you, in your opinion, say is like the one most important trait of a great project leader? If I could push you to do one.
If I had to pick one, I would go with emotional intelligence. And the reason I picked that is because that's what ties everything together. If you can't understand your people, if you can't build trust with your teams, and you can't lead with empathy, you're really going to struggle to deliver this. And you're going to really struggle to create a team that can be really well performing. If you've got that, you can recognize when people are struggling. And when you recognize, that could be the difference between project stalling and being successful. If you can see when somebody can't necessarily see the bigger picture and you can help that, you'll encourage different things. So yeah, there's a lot of right answers here, but I probably would stick with emotional intelligence. If you've got that and you're able to kind of tie that team together, that's the winner.
Yeah, I'm actually really encouraged by that answer, because one of my kind of hobby horses, if you like, and people who listen to me regularly on the podcast will know this, is I'm really pushing the kind of the people side of project management. And broadly speaking, the competencies fall into kind of process and people type things. We could have a debate about whether that's true, but I argue that, with the advent of AI and everything else, the process side of things is probably going to be the bit that gets eroded over time. And that people side of things, which is already important, becomes even more important. And emotional intelligence, I think, is right up there. So I think that's a great answer. Thank you. Well, look, thanks very much, Steve, for joining us, and also to everybody who's listening or watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, but in the meantime, if you've got any comments or feedback, then please do email us. You can get us at apmpodcast@thinkpublishing.co.uk, or if you're a Spotify user, you can leave us a comment directly in the app. So that's it for this episode, and we'll see you next time.